Hi, this is the Blues Podcast, and I'm Big Boy Bloater. Now, I know I say this often that I have a legend with me, but today I really do have an absolute legend with me. We get a lot of guitar players here on the Blues Podcast, but this guy is a multi-instrumentalist. He plays just everything. A fantastic guy, a fantastic musician, a really nice guy. It's my great, massive, very pleasurable honour to introduce to you the one and only Edgar Winter.
Hey, what an intro. Big boy, are you ready to rock and roll?
I'm always ready, Edgar.
Fire away.
It's great. It's great to have you on the show, man. It really is. You've had such an interesting career. I'm not quite sure where to start. Actually, I am sure know where to start. I want to go right back to the early days. Talk a little bit about yourself and, of course, your brother Johnny. I was interested to find out that you guys started playing ukuleles. That's how you started out. How did that come about with the ukulele? Was that your parents' idea, or is it something you guys wanted to do?
Yes, our whole family was musical. My dad played guitar and banjo, and he played alto sax in a swing band in his youth. He sang in the choir, the church choir, and he had a barbershop quartet that would come over to the house and sing. And he showed us our first chords on ukuleles. And I think this was when Johnny was about 7, and he's 3 years older. So I would have been only 4 years old. And my mother swears that we went on this radio show, like a kid hour show called the Uncle Willie Show, when I was just 4 years old. And I wasn't able to play yet. Johnny played uke and I was singing harmony. But we were little kids singing like Everly Brothers, and wake up little Susie, I want to go home, you know. Then Johnny graduated to guitar, and that was just like instantaneously his axe. And it became apparent to me that he was going to be the guitar player in the family, in the group. So I just said, well, I'll play everything else. So I switched over to bass guitar for a while, and then I played drums in the band for a while. Then electric pianos came out. I heard Ray Charles doing What I Say. I said, wow, what a cool sound. I've got to have one of those. So and I remember beating my hands bloody on those upright pianos. You'd stick a mic in it and it would all feed back, and it was a nightmare. So electric piano said, hey, I got an amp just like a guitar player. So that was a lot of fun. And that's then we started to put together bands with our friends around the neighborhood. And because our whole family was musical, my mom played beautiful classical piano, and granddad played trumpet, and my great-grandfather played fiddle, played violin. So it was just sort of a family household activity. And we thought everybody must have played. And then, you know, we started talking to our friends. And, what, your daddy didn't show you no chords or nothing? What's going on? So Johnny loved the spotlight. Ever since I can remember, he wanted to be a star, and he had that drive and ambition. He had the dream, and I never really had that. I never had that much of a desire. I just loved music in and of itself, the beauty of chords and harmony and rhythm, and so he was Johnny Cool Daddy Winter with the pompadour and the guitar and the shades and the girls, and I was like the quiet kid that played all the instruments. So Johnny would pick the songs, and he'd learn the songs and learn all the guitar parts, and then I had to figure out what everybody else was playing, and then to show our friends around the neighborhood, since they didn't play, I was the music teacher, so I showed them all the parts.
Yeah. I've heard you say before that, you know, you weren't kind of that interested in the spotlight. It was Johnny's kind of thing, and you were happy to hang back. But I've seen clips of you on video, and you work in the spotlight pretty good, I think. You know,
Thank you.
Is it something you had to work on, or was it actually naturally there, but you just didn't really know it was there?
I didn't know it was there, and I had no desire to do it. It was Woodstock. Woodstock changed my life, but yeah, I really got to enjoy it. But when I was younger, I never thought that, I never thought about what I looked like when I was playing. And we were playing like things like after the football game, dances, and church socials, and then we started playing in clubs when I was in my teens, and it was all dance music, and there wasn't a lot of blues really. It was mainly whatever was on the radio. So so I was saying I never thought about the look until Johnny invited me up to New York and to play on his first several albums, and then to sit in with his blues trio as a special guest, which was really cool because nobody knew Johnny had a brother. So he'd play the first half of the set with the trio, and now I'm going to bring on my little brother Edgar, and he said, "Wow!" Everybody went crazy. They said, "Wow, they look alike," So
there's two of them.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly. But it got to be a lot of fun. I enjoy jumping around and having a good time on stage.
It certainly looks like it. Yeah, like I say, well, I've watched many a clip where you've just been absolutely rocking it, and I've thought this guy says he's not interested in the spotlight, but look at him go. It's fantastic. It's you really sold it. I think to be honest. So I think you've done. I think for a guy says he didn't like the spotlight, you've done good there, man. It's,
thank you. Thank you.
You should be proud of that. I know you've got an awful lot of different musical tastes, and it wasn't just the blues for you. It was lots of jazz and classical stuff. Was that was something you picked up? I know you said your mum was like a classical pianist. Mm-hmm. Was that something you picked up from your parents?
Largely. Our taste, Johnny loved the country style acoustic blues. He loved Muddy and Little Walter and Howlin' Wolf and Robert Johnson and some of the Texas guys like Johnny Guitar Watson, T-Bone Walker, Gatemouth Brown, and I gravitated more toward people like Ray Charles and Bobby Blue Bland and B.B. King, the horn style, more urban style blues. And when I started listening, I just loved Ray. I loved that. I loved his band, and I loved his music. He had that gospel soul, and just a great piano player and the most soulful singer ever has been. I guess that's what got me interested in jazz, was listening to Ray. And then I started discovering all of the horn players in my teens. I hadn't, like I said, I had played guitar, bass, drums, and keyboards. And then I drug my dad's old alto sax out of the attic and learned how to play that. And then, like, R&B was getting popular, and there were bands like Otis Redding and Wilson Pickett and all Midnight Hour, all that stuff. So and all of the old, like Little Richard, was all sax solos. And I thought, well, next to guitar, sax is the rockinest instrument there is. So there were two attractions for the saxophone, was the rock style and the jazz style. And then I discovered, Cannonball Adderley was my favorite guy. And Charlie Parker was really the great genius innovator. He started it all. And Miles, all the jazz, Coltrane, all those guys. And I got immersed in that for a while, and I still love jazz. I don't listen to it as much as I did as a kid, but I do. I love the improvisational. I mean, it's really deep music, and Johnny listened to it as well. You wouldn't have thought so, but he actually enjoyed other styles, I think, more than people would have imagined or realized.
Back in the early days, when you were playing together, and you started to bring in some sax into the band. Am I right in thinking Johnny wasn't really kind of down with that? The sort of alto sax sound, he didn't kind of think it was working. And how did that make you feel? Did that cause friction between you two guys, or was it just a kind of musical thing? That's cool.
Yeah, I think it was more my interest in jazz rather than saxophone as an instrument. We had two sax players in the band, and they were rock, they were just straight ahead rock guys. I think Johnny didn't want me playing sax in the band because he knew that I would be uncontrollable, and of course he was right.
So did you? Did you want to go more down that jazz route? Was that really where your heart was? Because I know you've done all sorts of different sort of musics. You've explored many different genres of music and styles and all that. Is that really where your heart was?
Yep. At that time,
most fond. Yeah.
At that time, I was heavily into jazz, and I did that for a while. In other words, I formed several different groups and tried to play as much jazz as I could, mostly like supper club kind of standards where there are a lot of changes and you get to improvise to some extent. And I also played in a lot of big bands then, which is where I ran into all the guys that later became White Trash. White Trash was sort of a reunion of all the guys that I played with in various horn bands back in Texas and Louisiana. But after I did that for a while and then got interested in arranging, Johnny decided, because there were so many songs coming out with horns in them, he wanted to have, we had a little horn section, trumpet and alto or tenor, two horn guys, very bluesy kind of, simple parts, but enough to give it that feel of R&B stuff, which was a lot of what we were playing. So and you just mentioned, like, I love classical. I've never been able to understand why music has to be separated into genres like that. To me, it's all music, and it either takes you somewhere or it doesn't. And I think there's all kinds of great music. I mean, there's great blues, there's great jazz, there's great rock, there's great classical. I mean, any kind of like polka music, there's going to be some guy that just tears it up, whatever style it is. Just it's such a heartfelt thing, and music is a universal language. And I've always marveled at how, like, the blues in particular is something that I've always loved. And I've never concentrated on blues. I always wanted to stay out of Johnny's way. I didn't want, just out of love and respect for Johnny, I had the band White Trash, which was really the closest I got to blues. Being R&B, that was that was the real deal. White Trash was a real R&B band. But I really tried to stay out of Johnny's area there.
You mentioned as well earlier that your brother Johnny, obviously you've got the new album coming out, which is a tribute to him. But you said that he's your biggest musical hero. Do you? What turning the tables a little bit on that? What did he think about your musical career and what you were doing? Was he ever Did he ever give you any advice, or did he ever turn to you and say, "Oh man, you shouldn't have done that"? Or did he ever give away what he was really thinking about your musical output?
I think Johnny liked, he supported and encouraged me in, I think, more in jazz and classical than in rock. I think he felt that was where my heart was. Also, less competition for him if I restricted myself to that area. But I do think that he honestly cared. We were inseparable as kids, and learned to play together, and had almost a sort of telepathic communication when it came to, like, I knew all his licks and he had heard a lot of mine, and
Yeah.
you know, we it was great playing together. And I think that for example, when he did the first album, uh, he put "Drowning My Own Tears" on that record, and with no guitar. And I always felt like he did that song, especially for me, because he he knew how much I loved Ray, and I think he wanted to give me the opportunity to uh, to play something on the album that I loved and that would be in my style. So, you know, he just said, write out the horn parts just like Ray did it, you know, and play the piano and I'll sing it, you know, and no guitar. And uh, it was so emotional for me when I did my version on this album, because I felt like I was singing that song back to him the same way he sang it to me when he was so young and alive. And also I felt like I was singing it for all the guys in past bands, uh, Ronnie Montrose, Dan Hartman, the people that are no longer with us, to my
Yeah.
parents who have gone. It was very emotional. I was sitting, as a matter of fact, right here in my home studio is where the whole album started. I played all the songs on piano and then sang all the vocals right here in this studio. So it was
Wow.
late at night and I was singing and I got all choked up and cried, but got through it. So
That Ray Charles song is one of my favourites, and I thought you did just a magical version of that. Really, really, just the opening chord,
wow,
just sold
thank
it
you.
to me straight away. It was brilliant. Yeah, loved it. Absolutely loved it. I want to go just back a little bit to what we were talking about earlier when I was saying, you know, I've seen lots of videos of you, you know, moving and shaking and really doing it, really selling it, getting in that spotlight and doing it. Um, just to prove a point, you were like the first guy to put a strap on a keyboard, right? I mean, how did you come up with that idea? Was it because you wanted to get out from the keyboard and do your thing? Where did that come from? Because that's a brilliant invention. You know,
Well, thank you.
must tell us about that.
Yeah, it's such an obvious idea. I was amazed that no one had thought of it before. But I was always frustrated being stuck behind a big bank of keyboards because you can't
Yeah,
move, you can't go anywhere, and you've got a sustain pedal, one foot on a sustain pedal, another foot on the volume pedal, and you're behind all of these instruments. Nobody can see what you're doing, and if you're singing, you're pretty much chained to that spot. And what gave me the idea was when the early synthesizers, there was the Moog, Robert
yeah,
Moog, generally credited with inventing the synthesizer. That was like one big bulky unit. But
yeah. Right.
there was this synth called the ARP, the ARP 2600, and it had a separate keyboard, a remote keyboard, so that, like, the brain or the guts of it was this mad scientist looking contraption with all kinds of knobs and sliders. You've probably seen me play it on videos. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
and then the keyboard had this big umbilical cord, connecting that thing. And I saw it in a music store and I said, oh, looks like you could just put a strap on that thing and play it. It was light enough, which is exactly what I proceeded to do. And I'll never forget the first night I walked out with that keyboard strapped on. It was, the crowd just went crazy. Nobody had seen
Yeah.
anything like it before. And you could even say, I think of all the things I've done throughout my career. Just coming up with that idea was a real game changer. It really changed the face of music. It changed the look of a lot of bands, and it certainly
Yeah.
changed keyboard world. And then, of course, I started looking for an instrument, a song to showcase and feature the synthesizer, and uh, the riff that later became Frankenstein was something that I wrote years before when I was playing with Johnny. When he would introduce me as his little brother, it like it was that dun 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 dun. It was like a cool bluesy kind of walk-on riff, you know. And we played a version of it back then with I played Hammond organ and Hammond B3 and alto sax, and then I did a dual drum solo with Johnny's drummer,
Yeah.
Red Turner at the time. So we played it and forgot all about it. But then later I thought, I'll bet that riff would just sound really cool with that subsonic synth bottom. And as soon as we hit it, man, we said, oh, this is killer. This is something. This is going somewhere. So we just worked it up and started playing it live. I never thought of recording it because the thing, like as soon as I would invent a new sound, that would inspire me to write a different section, and so we'd add that to the song, and it kept getting longer and longer and longer and longer, and it got to be like almost a half hour long, 25 minutes long.
Wow.
So we finally accidentally recorded it just messing around in the studio. Like the cardinal rule back then was tape is always rolling, so we'd come in a lot of times that we'd warm up, because that song was just so much fun to play. So there you go. That's how Frankenstein came into existence.
That's great. Being a multi-instrumentalist like you are, having a synthesizer coming along that could make so many different great sounds must have been a fantastic thing. Must have been very, give you lots of ideas, like you say. Was it easy to sell it to the audience as well? Was everybody on board with this new sound, or did you have to kind of work a little bit and go, no, guys, this is going to be great, jump on?
No.
Was it easy taking that new technology?
It was easy. It was easy in live terms. Now, conceptually, synthesizer was it was getting a bad rap. Like people were accusing it of dehumanizing music, and there were a lot of people that were more programmers than being musically inclined, and they would like create kind of dumb loops, fast things that they physically couldn't play, but that they could program a synthesizer to do. And then a lot of people were using synthesizers to emulate the sounds of already existing instruments, like to be a horn section or to be strings or to be like a piano. And I loved all those old sci-fi movies like Forbidden Planet, that had synth and theremin and all of those things. So I just looked at it, well, here's a brand new instrument. And the other thing that I used to argue this with people when they would talk about it being like dehumanizing music. I said, well, look at a piano. What is that? It's rods and hammers and pedals and strings. Yeah. It's a machine. And you can't do much. You go bing, you strike a note, and that's it. And now that's more a symbol of the industrial revolution. But a synthesizer is the information age. It is as flexible as the human mind. You've got oscillators that can create any kind of a waveform, so you can make it sound like anything. And then you can introduce modulations like vibrato, pitch bend, growl, like all of these. You can do anything with it. That to me is a million times more human, than the clunky old piano that's more like a machine. So that was my argument for the synthesizer. You're right that it was easy live when people saw it, and then they would hear it and they'd, oh, wow, he's on a Strat. You can actually see what he's doing. That was a new thing. And plus, they were cool sounding. You could make them sound like a guitar if you wanted, or virtually anything you could imagine. So it wasn't a hard sell live wise, but I think it was like in terms of people's ideas about it. So there you go.
Yeah. What about these days? Obviously, lots and lots of technological leaps in music these days. You know, there's lots of stuff going on. Are you as quick to embrace it now as you were back in those days?
Well, everything is digital now, and everything. It's just that it's not that I'm any more or less into it or out of it, but it's just so commonly done. Like almost all records are, you know, a lot of them aren't even live drums. A lot of them are totally computer driven, and it's more computer than it is just synthesizer now, because you've got, like, back in the synthesizer days, you had to create the sounds. You had to understand wave synthesis, and then they started coming out with workstations where they would have hundreds of programs. Like, you want a piano, boom, you push a button, you got a grand piano. You want a saxophone, you push another button. You want strings, push another button. You had to do all that with patch chords and ingenuity back in the synthesizer days. But now it's a different world. So not only do I still use it, but everybody does. So it's, you know, it's an idea that the world has fully embraced, and I don't even think people. It's so prevalent. People don't even. They're not even aware of it existing. You know what I'm saying? Like the average person, they'll hear a record and they don't think. Like, I listen to them and I say, "Oh, I know what drum machine that is," or "I know what sound that is." I know, but normal people, they just think, you know, it's just music. You know, they don't realize that a lot of it is being not physically played by people in a lot of cases.
If you and Johnny had been born 50 years later, do you think your musical careers would have taken off as much as they did back in the day?
I think Johnny's drive and determination would have seen him become a star regardless of what era or age he was born in. And as I said, I have him to thank for, you know, the career that I've enjoyed over the years. And you know, who knows what, if it hadn't been for Johnny's fame and popularity, I don't know what I might have been, like an engineer or something, like a music teacher, or I would have been in music somehow. I don't know exactly how, or a struggling jazz musician. You know, who knows what I would have done? But yeah, I think that's an interesting question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before. But yeah, the blues is still around. And I'll guarantee you 50 years from now, you know, people tend to think of the blues as something that's old, it's already happened, and it's kind of over with. But blues, to me, it's the granddaddy of all music. Blues developed into ragtime, and then Dixieland, and then swing, and then modern jazz, and then found its way into rock and roll. And I mean, people like Chuck Berry, I mean, it's blues. And then the other influence was the country influence, the rockabilly, kind of like Jerry Lee Lewis and those and Elvis, you know, those guys. But there was also country within blues itself. There was country blues and urban blues. Like I was saying, Johnny loved the country blues, and I like the jazzier urban style of blues. But I think people forget, or are not even aware of what a profound influence blues continues to have on every form of popular music that you hear today.
Yeah,
It's here to stay.
Absolutely. I think so. I think it's still in its infancy, to be honest. I think the great thing about blues is that it's continuously reinvented itself. You know, just when you think you've got a handle on what the blues is, somebody comes along, like Johnny, changes it all again. You know, and then someone comes along a few years later and changes it again. And from what it started out to what it's become now, it's a very different beast. But it's all still blues. And it's still growing. I guess that's the exciting thing. That's what keeps people interested, I guess, in the blues.
Yeah, and it's so universal. Like, you can go anywhere in the world with people that you can't talk to, that you know, that speak a different language, but you know, you can sit down and play the blues with them instantly, and you know, they know exactly what it is, and you've got an instant communication. And it's a great bridge. Another thing that's ironic to me, I really believe that blues and jazz are the two uniquely American, you know, great contributions to music, and and the irony is in that blues musicians are so much more highly respected and appreciated and revered everywhere else in the world, like in the UK, everywhere else in the world other than here in America, where the music originated. And it's like I can go to Japan and play the Blue Notes and play jazz, or go play the Montreux Jazz Festival, but the people will not think of me as a jazz musician here in the United States. And I don't know what's up. I don't know what's up with that. But
I mean, you've worked with so many people over the years. You know, the real big names, huge names in music. Worked with, you know, everybody. Was there anybody? Was there on this album? Was there anybody you wanted to get that you couldn't get?
Oh yeah. You know, the first guitar players I thought of were Clapton, Jeff Beck, and Jimmy Page, and for, you know, whatever reasons I could get any of those guys. But maybe if we do another one, who knows? Maybe next time around. But you know, that's the great thing about music, is that if you stick around long enough, you eventually run into people that have shaped and influenced your music, people that you love and respect, and like, I never dreamed that I would meet one of the Beatles and play on stage, you know, with and one of the you know, Ringo asked, we met in 2008. He invited me to play in the All-Star Band. On his 70th birthday, we were at Radio City Music Hall in New York, and there was a surprise planned for him that he was not aware of. And it was after we'd walked off stage, and we were coming back on to do the encore. And over the opposite side of the stage walks on Paul McCartney and Joe Walsh.
Oh, wow.
And then we're playing Birthday. I just lost it. I said, I can't believe I'm on stage with two of the Beatles, with Paul McCartney. Hey, it's your birthday, you know, and I was beyond happy, you know, over the moon. I said, I can't believe this is happening. And you know, Michael McDonald, he's just one, and he's on this album. And he just does a magical vocal on Stranger, which is a very uncharacteristic Johnny song, a beautiful ballad, really not a song that you would, it shows his sensitive, vulnerable side that he was sort of reluctant to, you know, to put out there much. But playing with Michael was just a great joy. I just love his voice, and he's such a talented writer and player. And you know, I got to work with Leon Russell, another great one of my favorite keyboard guys, and that that was a whole different musical education in itself. And like you said, so many people, but you know, through it all, it's always been the music that keeps me going, that keeps me interested. Uh, you know, I fell in love with music at such an early age, and it's and I love it every bit as much today as I did when I first started out playing.
Yeah. Do you feel it keeps you young, keeps you going?
Absolutely, a good point. It does. And if you ever get bored, just pick up a new instrument, and that's what I've always done. And you're back to square one, and it reminds you of the way it was when you were first starting out.
As a multi-instrumentalist like you are, playing just pretty much everything, do you gravitate to certain instruments for writing? Do you think, oh, I'm going to do a bit of a ballad song, so I'll hit the piano, or if it's more a rock song, you just sort of head for the guitar, or how does that work for you?
Good question. I don't like to use instruments in my writing. I like to write in my imagination. I just like to hear
Right.
music in my head, and I find that if I if I sit down at a keyboard or pick up a guitar, uh, I tend to fall into the repetitive patterns that I'm familiar with on that
Yeah.
instrument, and and guitar players generally write guitar songs, and keyboard
Yeah.
players like Elton John or Billy Joel write keyboard style songs. I For writing, I do most of my writing like in that sort of alpha state where where you're drifting off to sleep, or just I dream a lot of songs. I've written several songs in dreams, and I'll just be coming back into consciousness out of a deep sleep, and hearing music in my head, and I will keep a little memo recorder or a pad and pencil there to write down ideas. Uh, but sometimes I will want to write a song like that, like a real piano song or a guitar song, and then I will pick up that instrument. But in general, I like to just imagine the imagine the songs, hear the melodies, and just sort of, to me, it's a freer kind of experience. So
Yeah.
and I the instruments. I love saxophone. I consider that my main instrument. There's something about the saxophone. It's your life's breath is supporting the tone, and you can bend notes with your embouchure, with your lip,
Yeah.
and you have a natural vibrato that you also do with your lip and your embouchure, and it's like it becomes an extension of your. It's similar to the guitar in that respect. It's a more human instrument. The keyboard is great for visualizing a whole song. You've got all the keys, and you can play
Yeah.
chords. You can play bass in the left hand. You play chords, and you can play melody. You can't do that on any other instrument. You can sort of do it on guitar if you're really great, if you're very clever,
Really good.
but not many people can play guitar like that. And so keyboard is great for understanding music theory too. It's really good. But just to have fun playing, I the saxophone is the instrument that for just jamming, playing jazz. I'm more fluid. I can pretty much that whatever I can think of, I can pretty much play on that instrument. But not so much so with keyboards. I just never practiced hard enough to develop all that technique and facility. But I
Yeah.
love keyboard. I love keyboard. It's
I
great.
think I think saxophone's interesting. I mean, I tried to play it a little bit, and I had to go on a few and learn, all the keys and notes.
Hmm.
For me, it's a very organic instrument, but it doesn't make any sense. The keys, all over the place. You go down, and then you got to press another button, and you get a different note, and it's all over. Like you say with a piano, everything's laid out in front of you, and you can see all the notes, and it kind of makes sense. It's
yeah.
It's there, and guitar as well is the same. All the notes are laid out. It's there. Saxophone, it's like I'm not surprised. Saxophone is such a big instrument in jazz because it just seems to lend itself to that. It's the craziness, and I could never get on with that. Yeah, so I salute you for
thank you
for working out how to play the sax.
Thank you, big boy. Yeah, I love it. Guitar. The cool thing about guitar is that it's easy to transpose. If you learn a position, you can just move it up a fret and do the exact. If you learn a lick on piano, you have to completely relearn everything in every key is every key is different. So, but visually, the piano, like you said, you can see all the notes. On a guitar, you can't exactly. Like, you can play an E on your low E string or the A string, or you can play it in a whole bunch of different places, and it's a bit different, and it is one thing. Certain things are easier on guitar, and certain things are harder, on keyboard. But that's the world of music. That's what makes it so much fun. Every instrument,
absolutely,
every instrument is different.
If they're all the same, it would be boring, wouldn't it?
It would.
Right? Everything would come out sounding the same. So yeah. Edgar, I always like to finish up these little chats with a bit of a crazy question. So I'm going to fire this at you now. Stick with me because it is a bit of an odd one, but I'd love to hear what you say. It's years in the future, and you are still with us. You're still playing. You are, you're great. You're loving it. Doing all your stuff. The world is a beautiful place. We seem to have sorted out all our problems and kind of, got everything fixed, and everything's great. Until one day we get the news that there's going to be a big meteorite come and just obliterate the Earth. It's going to be nothing left. It's going to be gone. So the world president gets on the phone to you, and he or she says, Edgar, I know you've heard about, it's the end of the world is coming and all that. So listen, we thought the best thing to do would be to for the human race to go out on the world's biggest party. We're going to throw this huge party. It's going to be fantastic all around the world. Everyone's going to be taking part in it. Now the world president says, Edgar, we want you to put a band together to play. And the question is, who's going to be in the band? And what song are you going to play?
Woo!
There you go. Who's in the band? What song are you going to play?
Is it people now living, or can I choose from?
I think because it's in the future, we can have like holograms of people and that sort of thing. So you can choose anyone, dead or alive. Anybody you like, really. I think so. Just go for it.
Yeah. Well, I'd definitely have Johnny in it for sure.
Yeah. I knew you were going to say that straight away.
I'd say that straight away.
Absolutely.
And for a party, I mean, I would probably want to pick guys that I never got a chance to play with, like Charlie Parker, Charlie Parker and Coltrane and Dizzy Gillespie and Miles, in the horn section, and wow, there's a keyboard player. I think I'd probably pick mostly jazz guys. That maybe Dr. John and Billy Preston, and let's see, who else would I get? There's bass players. I might get Jocko, or I love John Bonham as a rock drummer. I'd like to get Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich in there. and
Battling away.
yeah, yeah. And I'd want to play, if you to play one song, that's an impossible question. It would be a medley. It would be a never-ending medley of a whole bunch of songs. But I would probably write a song. It would be similar to what I did on Entrance, where like one side is a continuous 25-minute side, and there are different movements that represent jazz, blues, classical, and rock. So I would either do a long medley, or write a song along those lines.
Yeah.
So and definitely if it's going to be a party, it'd be a whole medley of party songs. So that's a great question.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, to talk about
sounds like it would be a great party.
Odd questions like that. Once somebody asked me, "What is your first memory of music?" And I thought, wow. What is it? I had to cast my mind back and think, when did I first become aware? What's the first music I heard? And what I came up with was I was warm and cuddled, nestled in my mother's lap. And I could feel this beautiful sensation flowing all over and around me. And this was before I could talk. There are not any words in this memory, and I didn't know what this thing was, but it was just enthralling and fascinating. And I started squirming around, and I got to get to this. What is this? And then I was able to peek up between her arms over the keyboard, and then I could see that her hands were making these beautiful undulating movements, and as I watched it, I said, oh, there's a correlation between what those hands, the shape that's like creating this sensation, this sound that I'm hearing. And I couldn't believe that I had forgotten that, and it, to me, it has so much to do with my feelings about music, the love and joy and feeling of warmth and family and security. And I've asked a lot of people that since, and they would say something like, a record they heard or something they heard on the radio, something mechanical. And for me, it was that human thing. And one other one I remember was I was doing a blues thing, and this guy's, give me your definition of the blues in 10 words or less. And I said, God, I can't. Said, the blues is transforming suffering into joy. That's what I think blues does. That's what music does. And it's kind of Zen-like in that suffering is universal, and one of the things about blues is it's sad, but it makes you happy, and it's that interplay of opposites, and it's realizing, like a lyric like nobody loves me but my mother, and she could be jiving too. You can't help but smile when you hear that, and that's I think that all music does that, blues in particular. So there are a few crazy questions.
Edgar, it's been fantastic talking to you, man. Thank you so much. Take care, man.
You too. Bye-bye now.
Thank you for joining us on the Blues Podcast. Please don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from. And also make sure you leave us a review and a rating, as this helps other people find the Blues Podcast. I'll catch you next time. Bye.